All right. Hey, what is going on, Aces Axis fans? Today, something very unique. The first in a series where I sit down with some of my favorite guitar players and we literally just talk about guitar for an hour or so. A lot of my other interviews are kind of on the fly, a little bit more gear based, or other gear based, maybe music based, and this is more or less about love of these six strings. And I think we're going to get to learn a little bit about the person through these stories in a different journalistic way. So, the title of this for me and my friend Mr. PJ Will over here is Two Birds of a Feather. This is the first in my series. I hope to make lots of these. We are in my doghouse right now.
Woo!
Oh, I like that. Didn't even plan that. That was awesome.
I just knew.
That
I
was
knew, Kev.
so great. And yeah, we're just gonna hang out. Hope you guys want to hang out with us. Grab a guitar, just kind of jam away on the couch. Grab a cup of coffee or something like that. And we're gonna get to learn more about my friend Mr. PJ here. PJ, how are you tonight?
I'm great, buddy.
That's awesome.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Dude, no problem. Like I said, this is the first one. PJ's been one of my nearest and dearest friends, people that I think we have a soul connection with for well over a decade at this point. So it's my pleasure to ask him to be here first. So the first question, is guitar your first instrument?
Guitar was not my first instrument. My first attempt at playing music was actually like a snare drum in school.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
And it wasn't the best experience.
No? No, that's too bad.
No, I just had a really rough, tough instructor, and I just didn't really stick it out.
Right. Was
You
it
know?
just very like you had to learn by the book and he was just very stringent, or just the way that he taught just didn't mesh with you?
I think that was more the case. It was a she actually.
Oh, I
and
apologize.
she just, just we did not click.
Yeah.
And she was kind of rough around the edges, and I knew that she wanted me to do well, but at the same time, it was her approach. I probably just didn't mesh.
As I've gotten older, you kind of learn that everybody learns differently, and
Absolutely.
it's kind of like it's a art and a skill form to kind of convey that to different people because I need to be hands on with something. I could read a book all day long, and I still feel if I don't have my hands on something,
Yeah.
as soon as I touch it, I'm like I forgot everything I read and everything like that. So, but everybody's different. So. I guess that's the point of being a teacher is to try to mesh with all the different kids and learn,
Yeah.
everybody's little niche. And it's unfortunate that didn't work out for you. So since the drum didn't work out, did you just put it down? And did the guitar come about because of a family member? Or was it just like, well, drums didn't work, I like guitar, go with that? Or how about did the guitar come into play after the drum?
Yeah, so when I was a little kid, like maybe 7, 8, 9 years old, my father's brother, my Uncle Larry, he was a guitar player in a few local bands.
That's awesome.
And
Here in Central New
Central
York.
New York.
That's
area,
great.
Yep. And, I saw him play early on, and I don't think I initially got the bug. I thought it was cool and
What
stuff.
time
but,
frame would have that been? Like like mid '80s? Is that?
this would have been like the tail end of the 70s into
So I
the
wonder
80s.
if- so it
like
would have been-
80, maybe 80,
Would have been
79,
awesome
80.
if you saw like Elf back in the day and would have been like, oh, I actually saw Dio. Like
That
I actually
would be
saw
cool.
Dio or something when I was 7 years old and never knew it.
Get him in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, by the way.
Yeah, Dio is such a. When I worked at side story, when I worked at Guitar Center, all I wanted to do was have somebody paint a mural of Dio riding a dragon on the back hallway because we had like 30 feet. I wasn't gonna
That'd
tell
be so
anybody and
awesome.
just have him do it because it's like that dude is one of the biggest voices in heavy metal
Oh
and is
my
from
God.
not far from here. And like we should have a statue of that motherfucker. Like screw Rocky. Like we should have a Dio statue. It'd be great.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Dio.
But I digress. Sorry about that.
That's
so,
okay, man.
Hanging out with Uncle Larry, it was.
Well, so yeah, I saw my uncle play a little bit here and there, and I think that, and also, it was like this is pre-MTV and stuff, so I think I got the bug through like records and stuff too, like seeing the Fillmore East album and seeing the Allman Brothers Band playing guitars and stuff, and I was like, wow, that's cool.
Right, or the Kiss Alive.
Yeah,
you open it up
all
and you're
those
like,
things.
oh my God, it's like
Right.
superheroes come to life and everything. So
Yeah.
I got into it when it was cassettes and CDs. But in the beginning of CDs, they used to come with those big posters. I don't know if you remember. They were
yeah.
like, and I was like, well, at least that was almost like the vinyl, because you kind of got the big visual and everything. But I did miss out. My parents I had a Sesame Street vinyl that I still have, and I have 2 copies of Thriller, so that is kind of cool to have. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm old enough to remember records. Yeah, unfortunately and fortunately.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with. I mean, obviously they're huge now again, and even tapes are cassettes and everything. It's funny.
I was probably on the very end of records though, because cassettes became like the king.
Yep.
It was like 8 tracks and cassettes kind of took over, and yeah, still had vinyl around though.
I loved being a kid and listening to the radio with my dual cassette player and recording your favorite songs, and you'd end up with like the DJ for the first 15
Oh,
seconds.
it'd make you so mad.
Yeah,
wouldn't
but
it?
that's kind of how you learn the song, and they'd fade it in, and you'd be like, wait, there's 2 more minutes to the song? I didn't know
Yeah.
about, because you only knew the radio edit and everything. But good day. But simpler times and everything like that. So, so what was your first guitar, and how did you go about getting it?
So my first guitar was an electric guitar, actually, and I really kind of wasn't 100% expecting it, but at the same time, I bugged my father it was out of a J.C. Penney or Sears catalog, I don't recall, one of those 2 things.
Yep.
And I was like, man, I'd really like to get a guitar, and then I was kind of, Uncle Larry can show me some stuff, things
Right.
like that. It was my way in.
That's a
basically.
smart way in.
Yeah.
That's great.
So I think the guitar was like called like a Discovery or something. It was like, like metal looking guitar. It had a
Right.
hockey stick neck and the whole headstock and, all that stuff. But
That's awesome.
yeah, it was pretty cool. It was like a candy apple red, just a, pretty cheap guitar.
Right.
Yep.
That's great. Candy apple red is a fantastic color. How did you go about learning? Did you learn from your uncle? Did you have a simple chord chart like a Hal Leonard one? Or did you just have records playing and you sat there and you were like, there's only 12 notes. I've got to be able to get one of them to work.
Yeah, it's funny, like I don't think I really had a focus on any one specific thing. Like I maybe got a tidbit here or there from my uncle, and I was quick in bands like in school, but I was always the vocalist. We'll have him do vocals, and the vocals thing was not really 100% me, but at the same time I embraced it because I wanted to be in the band. you know?
Right.
But I always wanted to be a guitar player, and so I think that I just kind of bumbled around, and I picked up a little bit here, picked up a little bit there, and I would just work at it until I started to pick up things,
And if you were a vocalist, you already had somewhat an ear for it, so that's a great way to start. I always know Michael Jackson. They always talk about how obviously he didn't play any instruments, but they were like, he could hum anything in the world. So he was always one of those people where they were just like, he would just hum what he wanted to hear and everything. So I wish I could sing better. I have the bass with me, and so many people are just like, oh, you could have been an opera singer, but it just doesn't seem to be in it for me. So maybe I should take lessons, but I don't know. What was the first riff you remember actually learning, and then full song you remember learning?
Well, I can't say it was Iron Man. So many other people.
Yeah.
The first thing that I learned on guitar was we were talking about this briefly before we sat down.
Yes.
It was Brain Damage by Pink Floyd.
Which
And-
is highly ambitious for a first song. So I like how
Yeah.
you were just like, yo, I'm gonna knock this thing out of the
Yeah.
park.
So, well, believe me, I didn't knock it out of the park at first. It took a lot of time, but
Hey, even T-balls have a part. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
even if it was a T-ball, it's still a part.
and it's ironic because I used my fingers when I learned it. It was more like a instead of a pick.
Right.
And so I started to develop using my fingers more, and I think, I don't know, it just kind of caught on with me. So Brain Damage was the first thing I kind of worked on and learned part of it. And then it actually became the song that I learned. But, I liked a lot of different music. I was playing like Ramones songs and things like that.
Yep.
Like the just Blitzkrieg Bop, things like that.
Yeah, yeah. One of the bands that I never got to see, unfortunately, like that, but absolutely love the Ramones. I was a big Columbia House BMG guy growing up. You get the 12 CDs,
Sure.
and there was a Ramones Greatest Hits, had a yellow cover, and it's like one of those. If I had 5 CDs that I played more than anything, like Tom Petty's Greatest Hits, Creedence Clearwater Revival's Greatest Hits, Remote, just like when you're in seventh to ninth grade, it's like, well, I'm just gonna get the greatest hits in case I don't, love the band, and then you just end up listening to that more than some of the CDs and everything. So, absolutely love the Ramones. So what was your first local guitar store? Sometimes kids in this day and age don't even have a local guitar store. It's like I ordered stuff through Amazon and I get my strings through them, and it's a very unfortunate thing.
I agree with you.
I remember
I
being
agree.
very intimidated going in, but at the same time just being in awe, just being like, I want to be the guy that like the guy behind the counter knows, and being like, I know what strings he wants. I was like, I want to be that cool one day.
Yeah.
So what was the name of the store?
So I lived pretty rurally, so to go to a music store for me was a big deal. It was a ways to go. The first 2 music stores that I recall going to frequently was there was a very small music store in Utica called Nicotera's Music.
Okay.
And there was this really sweet lady, Rose Nicotera, who she, always had pretty good instruments, and just about anything you could think of, she would dig it out.
Was it in like downtown Utica near like, I don't want to say the business district of Utica, but where there's a couple colleges? Or?
No, it was on a little side street, actually, right out of, off of, if you went down Genesee Street, you turned off a little bit, and it was down maybe 4 blocks off of the main
I used to live
drag.
somewhat near Utica, so that's just the only reason I was wondering.
But
I used to only have Big Apple Music, which was in
Yep.
New Hartford at the time when I lived out there. That was really
I
the
later
only shop.
started going there later on, but Rose Nicotera and her dad, I went there quite frequently. And then the Bebop shop right here in Liverpool. I remember the first time that I walked in there, I was just like you said, I was in this state of, whoa, this is no joke,
Yep.
I'm like, I don't know if if I'm
Am I
caliber
allowed
for
to
this,
be in here?
Yeah, because there was
exactly.
like guys jamming and stuff in there,
Yep,
and I
you're
was
like,
like,
stuff's
holy
on
cow.
the wall, and it's kind of
Yeah.
like a house. For those of you who don't know, that was actually my stomping grounds. Also, it's right in the village of Liverpool, and it was one of those guitar stores that kind of looked like a house.
Yeah,
So you walked in, and
absolutely.
everything was like on the wall. There was kind of a grumpy guy behind the counter, and you're like, am I allowed to play stuff?
Yeah.
Am I allowed to ask questions? Should I just know? It was one of those situations. Very cool place, but like I said, a little intimidating being a kid.
Yeah, like if you saw a Fender Strat, you didn't dare just say, hey, can I play that Fender Strat? Because you were afraid that they were going to be like, are you going to buy it? Or are you serious? Or
Right,
whatever,
and then you'd start playing your one riff that you had been working really hard on, and then you hear them just tearing it up and not even
Yeah.
trying, and you're like, oh,
Oh,
man, back to the
Yeah.
drawing board.
Exactly. Yep.
I used to rollerblade I used to live right outside the village, so I'd actually rollerblade there and take the rollerblades off outside, put sneakers on, go in and get GHS boomers when they were in the red packaging with the little dynamite in the
stick
cover.
on? Yep, I remember
Yeah.
those.
And it's funny because after working at a guitar store for a while, those had the most profit in them. I don't know if that's still true, but when I found that out, I was like, I wonder if that's why it sold them to me. And I was like, good for him. I mean, it's a business. And if it's an extra $1 or $2 a set of strings, I mean, shit, man, good for him.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, if you have a local guitar store, please try to visit it whenever you can. Even if you don't buy anything more than some strings, picks, something like that, even if you spend an extra couple bucks, it really means a lot to those people, and you may end up finding some really cool used gear and stuff like that.
And cool people.
And very cool people, yes, because...
Maybe a future bandmate, even.
Ooh, I like that. Maybe a future place you can work. Who knows, you need somewhere to work 2 days a week, and you're in there all the time, and they're like, hey, we'll put you on the books if you want to restring some guitars or something like that. But like PJ said, it's a great way to meet other musicians, and you can be interactive with local musicians, which is something very clearly I'm trying to do. So yes, please support local people, because we may not have guitar centers and stuff like that forever. We just lost all the Sam, and everything like that. So Things change all the time, and if we support local places, then they'll have our money and they won't have to change. So
Plus, it's nice to try a guitar before you buy it.
it really is, especially with acoustics. Electrics, I think you can kind of mesh. Maybe not Strats. Strats, I think, are a whole new fucking ball game. But like,
Yeah.
you pick up an Ibanez, I think you can kind of make it work and everything like that. But especially an acoustic or classical, you need to sit there, especially if you're spending some serious money. If you're picking up a $200 Yamaha, they're all going to be fantastic. But yeah, that's my little side note there. So what we were talking about, you were like, oh, it was a Strat when you would walk in a bebop shop and you would be like, oh, I don't know if I can play that. Was there a guitar that you were like, oh, Ace Frehley plays this Cherry Sunburst Les Paul, I'll never be able to afford that, or Hendrix plays this white American Strat, I'll never be able to play something like that? Was there a guitar that you were just like, one day as a dream I'll be able to get my hands on something? But
Well, the guitars that I gravitated towards for some reason, back then anyways, when I was younger, they weren't readily available. Like, I liked Explorers for some reason. I
Right.
like radical,
Right.
heavy looking things,
Totally. I mean, even V's. I mean, V's were out for a very small time, I think, like the original ones, and then it was just kind of like...
Then it went to the Jackson Road style V's and stuff
Which
like
I've
that.
never been a huge fan of. I love Randy Rhoads, but I like the symmetrical Jackson King V, I guess, is like the current, besides a Gibson one. And I actually like the Jackson because I like the points versus the rounded of the Gibson.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, so I mean, I remember, seeing Matthias Jabs. Do you know who he is? He was in the Scorpions.
yes.
He was in the Scorpions, as a matter of fact. But he was one of my favorite players because I don't know, I just thought he was a great player when I was a kid. And he played this Explorer. Mm-hmm. And I remember drawing pictures of it before I got, to really get a good guitar. And I was like, man, that guitar is so awesome,
Now, was he in the band with Michael Schenker, or was he in it when Uli Gene Roth, I probably butchered that name.
He
But,
replaced Roth. I
okay.
believe, yeah.
Who was just like, have you ever seen that dude's guitar with like the 32 frets and like the 4 preamps, and he's got a permanent fan on him, and that dude can play everything and just seems like a crazy
Well, the
German
Scorpions
dude.
always have great guitar players.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
always had great guitar players, but
And they're still rocking, right? I mean,
as far as I know, yeah.
Oh, yeah, man. I love the monochrome black and white Michael Schenker's V, one of the coolest Vs out there for sure. So, Scorpions, great band. So, did you buy your first real guitar? I hate to say real, but like your first like giggable, this is a solid instrument, or did you get a nice amp and you just worked with the guitar you had and got a bunch of pedals, or were you kind of like, I'm gonna get this really nice guitar and then build everything else up around it?
So I had that Discovery guitar for quite some time, and then I believe after I thought, hey, I might stick around with the guitar a little bit.
Right.
I think the first guitar that I was very serious about buying was a Gibson SG.
Awesome.
And I got it at Nicotera's, and it was a 69 SG.
An actual Gibson?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
man.
And you know what, though? I didn't fall in love with it.
Okay.
But it was the first serious gigging or giggable guitar that I had. And I think I had it for maybe 2 years tops before I got something else. I ended up getting an ESP for a short time.
Nice.
I was going through such a transition musically when I was learning guitar too, because I loved so many different kinds of music. But I was, like the kids that I hung out with were into punk and metal and, hard rock stuff. And
Right.
so I gravitated towards those kind of guitars initially. But then I kind of fast fell into finding guitars that I just felt were comfortable and played well, So.
It's going back to two birds of a feather. I swear I did not plan this. My first real guitar after my Carrera Strat, which I've never seen another one, I still own it somewhere, was an Epiphone SG, a black one actually. So that's kind of funny that it's Epiphone, but still SGs were kind of both of our first. And I've owned two, and I play in a lot of heavier bands when I was playing and stuff, and I do a lot of the hold the guitar and go down like that. And I always felt like the neck was just going to keep going one day. Just the
Yeah.
way where it sits and everything. And I was just like, I am going to break this motherfucker in half. And it was like, it would have been fun. But when you're a struggling financial musician and you break your only fucking guitar in half, it's probably not the funnest thing to have happen on tour. So, but I love the way they look. Tony Iommi is one of my favorite guitar players, and I just think he looks so cool. And they just don't sit. Even this Viper I have is kind of like a little bit different version of it, and even that doesn't sit perfect with me. And sometimes you're just like, I'm gonna make a guitar work no matter what because it looks cool, and you just play it and you fight it, and sometimes that's fun, I guess, is fighting an instrument. But yeah, just the SG never worked for me either, even though I love the way they look and sound. So have you ever gone back to a SG or anything like that, or was that kind of your one and done with it?
No, I appreciate them, but they're just not for me.
That's awesome.
They just feel too brittle and light for me.
Yeah.
Something about them, I need to. I don't know.
Yeah, totally.
just
I
sound
love the look of double cuts. I have a semi-hollow that I really like, so maybe it's just the smallness of it. Maybe if they make a Greg Koch version of an SG that's like, a quarter bigger or something like that, maybe something like that would be cool. So, what was your first amp? Not like small little, I had a Gorilla amp that was 10 watts or something like that, but what was like the first, like, I could put this, you could put over drums and be like, I don't have to crank it to 10 and everything like that.
Well, it was definitely a crate.
Awesome.
I got a crate 212 cabinet with a 50-watt head.
Hell yeah.
That was my first actual good amp.
Crate was definitely, I'm a little before my time, but it was always either PV or crate, it seemed like. I had a PV growing up. I still want a crate Shockwave head. Shout out to Andy Miller because he knows all about that head. It's 350 watt solid state head, and it was one of those things like Gwar used it because it was like that death metal saturated beyond crazy tone, so I wanted to run it stereo with my Boogie to have both the solid state tone and everything. But they're super cheap, and I just should buy one at one point just to show everybody them. But they're like 20 years old at this point, and I don't think they made a lot of them. But Crate Shockwave, very cool head if you're looking for a very heavy sounding head. Did you have a guitar style that you hated? Not necessarily like a style of music, but a guitar shape that you were just like, no way in hell is PJ touching that thing.
Yeah.
Oh, he's smiling, so there's got to be one.
The teardrop guitar.
Oh, the Vox?
The Vox
Yes,
teardrop guitars. The Stones had them, and like the Byrds, and like Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers used them.
Right.
I just
almost looks like a toilet bowl. Like it
almost
almost kind of looks like it.
I just couldn't get behind it.
Yeah. Have you ever got to actually play one in person
No,
or
I
see
have
one?
not. But
Now, if you
I'm
see
not-
one, are you going to attempt to play it to at least be like, okay, this does suck as much as
I don't know.
No.
I'm not in a hurry.
Understandable. And my next question was, is this feeling still true? And I'm going to go with yes, it is still true.
Yeah, I'm still not big on the teardrop.
Totally understandable. It was almost like one of those, I could see like the guys in Orgy, that synth band, playing them and it being like, oh, it just doesn't work and everything like that. So, but okay, I can understand that. I could totally see that. I never liked ovations. Those were one of those things where like trying to sell them to people.
Yeah, I don't like them.
I don't say like you would keep people against them, but I'd be like, see it slipping? And they'd be like, oh, it's got that little sandpaper thing. And I'd be like, yeah, but it's still slipping, But, everybody's got their own thing, I guess.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I almost skipped my own question. Tell me a oh shit moment that happened to you and your band. Either cops got called when you were doing a house party, amp blew up, you broke a string on a Floyd Rose, and you were just like, oh, this is going to be the end of this gig for now. Did you have a moment like that comes to mind?
Yeah, I had several. I can remember playing with some cats and like not doing so well. Like trying very hard and it just wasn't going well. And I wanted to bail so bad because I was just like, oh my God, this is just horrible.
Right.
So I remember I'm like, how do I get out of this? And I was just like So I just took the bottom string and just boing, broke them right off.
Man, that is some testosterone. That is,
Yeah,
you
and
know.
I was just like, I'm out of here.
That's a lot of anger just coming up because like strings are really heavy to
Well,
break. Good thing it wasn't New York XLs. Those things were unbreakable.
Yeah, it really was more of like, I need to get out of here. How do I do it?
Right. That's awesome. Were you done after that song? You were basically like, hey, I'm
pretty
done.
much. That was early on, and I was just like, looking back at it, I should have just, hung in there,
Right.
but I was just so like intimidated by guys that were like, I was still a very young player, and I wasn't sure like, whether I deserved to be up there and stuff. I was just like, I got to get out of here. How do I do it?
Yep.
Well, if I break my strings, I can't play.
There you go. There you go. Hey, yeah, I've never had an amp blow up. Cops got called at a house party. That I did have happen, but nothing too crazy. Floyd Rose though, that was my story. I had, so pre-YouTube, pre all that stuff, my first like expensive guitar was Ibanez Universe. Mom had paid a lot of money for it, broke a string, went home to restring it, and I just, you take all of them off as you do, and I was like, I broke the guitar. I was like, how, and it took me days to figure it out, but like I became a smarter guitar player because my mom was like, well, you got to figure it out because I just spent a whole lot of money on you.
Yeah.
So, go to the drawing board and figure it out. And I did. So, and now I can do Floyd Rose's super quick, and it just, became one of my favorite things to do. So, yeah. Who became the players/bands that shaped you as a guitar player? Because, sometimes you start out and like you were saying, you enjoyed the Ramones and stuff like that. But you usually, after a few years, kind of sink into like, okay, well, this is what I like. And, you kind of got through your first couple bands. Were there a couple players or bands that you were like, all right, this is like where I've kind of found my niche and love?
Well, I mean, the guys that I hung out with, like I had said, were mainly punk and metal guys, but I grew up listening to a lot of different kinds of music and a lot of music,
Right.
So I liked, everything. I liked folk players. I liked, like Southern rock a lot. I liked, just like the band Boston. I used to burn up tennis rackets to Boston.
Hell yeah.
I was like,
Well,
just a lot of different players.
was radio a lot cooler back then? Because I'm a little bit younger, and like I would listen to K-Rock, and it would be, I would learn some stuff, and then when it got to be like mid 90s, it was like, they played the same 10 songs.
Yeah.
Was radio cooler back then? Because
Yeah.
I always hear people are like, oh, I lived in Manhattan and we had this college radio station and
Yeah.
I learned about Rush before everybody and shit like that. So was
Yeah.
it more like that back
well,
then?
the radio stations were definitely better. I used to listen to a lot of the Utica area music stations, 96.9 WOUR, for instance.
See, the fact that you still remember that shows like it had it
Yeah.
keeps a memory in you and
Absolutely.
everything like that.
It was very commonplace for them to play a new band like, all the time. Like, here, check this new track out from so and so, and they were constantly like, they played local bands a lot.
Right.
They played.
I know 95X does try to do that a lot more with Scott Dixon and everything like that.
Yeah.
So not saying people don't do that in this day and age. So
Yeah, but I think that was definitely a factor too. Is getting to hear. I'm thinking also it happens to be the time and place when I was a kid. Because I was growing up in the early '80s, and I didn't really start playing guitar till like the end of the '80s.
Oh, okay, cool.
I think that I was just into so many different kinds of music, and it was very hard to maybe convince my friends to
Right.
listen to some of the things that I enjoyed.
understandable.
But at the same time, nonetheless, I was going to listen to it.
And it's great when you win them over every once in a while because, like, you'll be like, oh, the drummer was grooving to that Allman Brothers song because it's
Yeah.
like, oh, even if he's a metal drummer, he still realizes groove, So
Yeah.
it's like you get those little things and.
Well, and I think you and I talked about this one time before, is that my buddies that were into metal very often were hearing classics that were reinterpreted in a metal format.
Right.
Like, like Judas Priest did the Green Man Alicia. Like that was a Fleetwood Mac tune or a Peter Green tune.
Right.
And when I would try to tell them, oh, that's a Fleetwood Mac song or a Peter Green tune, and they'd be like, no, that's Judas Priest.
Right, right.
They'd challenge me, and I'd be like, okay, whatever. And when I was riding in their car, I listened to metal.
Right.
That's all we listened to.
Yeah.
When we were in my car, they might get pissed off because I was like, that's a Neil Young day. I'm listening to Neil Young today.
Right.
Or I'm listening to Pink Floyd all day
Hell
today.
yeah.
Or I'm listening to the Allman Brothers Band.
Right.
And then still metal too. I loved metal. I
Right.
still love metal, but there was just so many things to attach to. So a lot of different players grabbed a hold of me, I think.
Yeah, and I was a total MTV kid, so I was like, I don't know how you can only like one style of music. I was like, this is like, I was like, I like all styles of movies. Music is just, just
Same
like
here.
that. So I was
That's
like,
the way I feel about it.
I never understood, and like, I liked Metallica and all the heavier stuff when I was a kid, and like they'd be making fun of Bon Jovi and Motley Crue, and I'm like, yeah, but they write great fucking songs. Like, so I'm like, just because like
doing
they're not,
something right.
Right. I'm like, well, just because they're not metal bands, like good music is good music no matter what it is. So at least that's what I got from
Well,
it. So.
I think that once you start to develop as a musician, you start to find the cool in whatever you're listening to.
Right.
Like if you're listening to something that you typically wouldn't, you're going to attract your mindset towards something in the song regardless and say, well, I could get behind that a little bit.
Yep.
Whether you like it overall or not, that's another thing. But I think eventually I started to respect other players from other genres and other things anyways. So, and I think you're probably the same way. You just start to gain a respect for what it is that somebody like, take Green Day, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the guitar playing is very elementary, in my opinion.
Right.
But it's done so well, and it's like such a force that and same with the Ramones and some of the bands we were talking about.
Sometimes.
It just does its job adequately and right, and it fits the bill.
Yep.
But at the same time, then you think about like somebody who's really super, like like if you took like the Mahavishnu Orchestra or something like that, John McLaughlin, the guy's playing stuff, and you're just going.
You look at his chord. You look at those chords, and you're like, I can't even fake play that.
Yeah. So it's all over the place. I just grew to love so many different players and styles, and I try to incorporate that in my music today.
And I love when people are open. Dimir Borgir, one of my favorite black metal bands, and they played a live set with full. I don't know if it was the Polish orchestra or if it was a Norwegian orchestra, but we're talking like full 90-piece orchestra. They're all like in the singers are all wearing like monk masks and everything. So like the orchestra got into it. They were like, oh, this is awesome. And I mean, they're probably playing some of the most intricate stuff that they've played because they're probably not used to playing 220 beats a minute and going all over the place. And Dimir Borgir just does their craziness over it. And you're just like, this is the most epic thing in the world and everything. So I love when people appreciate all different styles of music and blend it all together. And if you guys have been checking out this channel, PJ kind of said something that's a part of this channel, and I don't even think he realized it. Part of this channel is to make everybody learn about new bands. I was always that guy in high school that was like hey, check out this band, check out this band. And I'm kind of getting to do that on a worldwide level now because there's a lot of really, really talented bands here in Central New York. So if you follow this channel, every week you get to hear about another one. You're going to hear about some awesome, awesome bands that I've never heard about 8 of the 10 bands before I interviewed them a week before, and some of them are my favorite new bands. Not even the styles of music that I would say I normally listen to, and just absolutely amazing songwriters and stuff like that. So follow this channel because you're going to find out about lots of different styles of music that for you to groove onto. Not just metal, not just punk, not just funk, but we got a lot of things coming up in the next couple of months that I can't wait to tell you guys all about.
Do you have a favorite player overall or influence when you're playing?
If I had 2, I hate to say it's 1, but if I had 2, the experimental guy would be Hendrix for me. My brother was 4 years older, so in his 9th through 12th grade, all he did was listen to Hendrix. So for that era, all I did was listen to Hendrix, a couple years behind him, and then Dimebag Darrell. Pantera was one of those bands where like I loved Metallica, and I always thought like I wasn't cool enough to listen to Pantera growing up. I was like, I don't have a beard, and I didn't have tattoos, and I didn't smoke cigarettes, and I was just like, I can't listen to Pantera. And then
That's hilarious.
Pantera 3, Watch It Go. It's like a hour and a half long documentary. Dimebag used to just film everything. And it's one of those things where it's like you watch that and you just want to be a rock star, because it's just like just guys on the road having fun. He's lighting firecrackers off in the bus and stuff like that. And I was just like, this guy seems like a clown, and it just wants people to have fun and experience some kick-ass fucking rock music while you're doing it. And I was like, I like the way that guy thinks. So I would say those two players. I don't know if it comes across in my playing or anything like that, but those would be my two people. If
Good to always go back to your
yeah,
players,
to say you saw like Hendrix, like I mean, every time I listen to Red House, I know Satriani and all those dudes are like, oh, Red House is like some of the best guitar tone ever, but he's doing that machine gun style riff, and you're just like, that dude was fucking 20 years ahead of like tone wise and everything like that. So I don't know if it was the drugs or if it was just that dude had a brain for music and just understood something that we didn't understood, or he just came at the right time where pedals were being known, Marshalls were coming up, Strats were coming up, and it was just like a whirlwind of everything perfect. Who really knows?
I think guitar heroes, or your influences, or the people that you gravitate towards, are just probably why we do it.
Yeah.
Like if I didn't have my David Gilmours and my Allman Brothers band and things like that, I don't know, what would I have done?
Right, and a lot of those
Would I have stuck to it?
And like a lot of those guitar guys from like the 60s and 70s growing up, like they just look like cool dude, like a young David Gilmour. You just kind of look at him, you're just like, it's a cool guy, like a young Bon Jovi, you're just like, it's a cool looking guy. So it's just like one of those things where it was like, as a young dude, I would think I was always like, well, I want to be a cool guy. So I was just, so maybe that was part of the reason why I was just like, oh, I'll go towards the rock scene and everything like that. So, but those would be my two players. Obviously I have, you go through phases of being like, Tommy Emmanuel is the best thing in the world, and all I want to do is learn acoustic guitar. And then, you just go through phases and stuff, but those two seem to be the ones that I go back to. I guess, like you said, it's good to go back to. Style, the way that you learned to play after you had kind of gotten the fundamentals down and you were just like, okay, I want to become more professional. Did you still kind of put records on and jam along and try to kind of learn lead work that way? Or did it become you were very regiment with sheet music and tablature? Or how did you kind of go from a beginner learning the steps to being like, I can sit down and I can actually like get better on my craft? How did you go about that?
I mean, I hate to say this because it sounds like such a cliche, but I really did have to play with a record or a cassette tape and just kind of keep trying it. And, it would start with one string sometimes. You just try to figure out what's blending so you knew where it was.
Right.
And you'd relate somehow. And then, eventually you learn a few chords and stuff. And then I think the good thing about that was developing my ear.
Most definitely.
Like you develop your ear along with, your muscle memory and all those things, and you learn bad habits.
Yep.
But the bad habits are what give you the character as a player later on.
Totally. I think like holding a pick is one of those things that like you watch videos of and you're like, oh, everybody holds a pick a little bit differently. Sure. And then when they tell you to change it, you're like, well, no, this is how I hold a pick and everything. So, yeah.
Yeah, the big thing is I think that because I didn't have a music store right down the road, it was a big deal to go to the music store. Mm-hmm. And when I finally did maybe get like a chord book or something, I looked at it at first and I was just like,
fuck are these X's
yeah,
everywhere?
I mean, what the fuck am I going to do with this, you know?
Yep.
But then once I started to, I wanted to play so badly because I did have a few friends in my bands that were just like, we don't need another guitar player. We're good without, we'll just have one guitar or whatever.
Right.
But I just wanted to so
Like,
bad.
well, if I
you
get
know?
good enough, they can't say no then.
Right. Yeah, but then by the time I started learning guitar, I moved on to other facets of music, and you know, like I did play metal for a little bit longer with another guy or two. But you know, I just think that once I got the idea of, hey, there's not really a rule you have to follow. It's just that there's many different things that you have to kind of investigate. That's a better way to put it.
Right.
You have to investigate so that you figure it out, you know. But then once I started learning chords and stuff like that, then I got the bug.
Right.
It was like a lot easier, you know.
Records, awesome.
Records and cassette tapes, you know.
Yeah, I had a Sony Walkman, a classic yellow Sony Walkman, and I still remember Damn It by Blink-182. Just sitting there and, you know, back and forth, like, we were just getting like 5 notes, and you were just like, oh, that's a beginning. If I can do those 5, well, I can do 5 more, you know, and everything like that.
Yeah.
So it was such a love-hate relationship at that point with guitar. I remember like hurting my fingers, like some nights where you would be like almost bleeding, and like you wake up the next day and you still have an indent in your finger, and you're like, is this right? Like,
Yeah.
but
You know, even just tuning the guitar was a big deal.
I used
you
to
know,
tune
like-
up like a whole step up and be like, this is really like delicate, and be like, yeah, because you're not very smart.
I remember
That's
when I
why.
got my first tuner, that changed everything for me.
Oh yeah.
It totally did. I remember I got like it was a Boss TU something needle tuner.
Yeah.
And that needle was like super accurate.
Versus
And-
a tuning fork and like be like, well, I got one of them right. Now let me
Before,
hope
I'd be
the
like,
rest.
hey, like the people I knew, could you tune my guitar for me?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, then once you learn how to do it and you get your ear developed and you actually tune your guitar, then things start to happen. I feel like. You know?
Yeah. All right. Next question. How long have you played your main guitar right here? Main guitar is a hard question. I don't want to say main guitar because we go through phases, and some stuff works for some projects and some stuff is just like, well, I'm songwriting. This is the one I go for. But I asked PJ to bring his favorite guitar. So this is the one that PJ brought. So
Yeah.
how long have you played this guitar, PJ? And tell us the whole story.
Okay, so I got this guitar, which is a Fender HMT Telecaster, a made in Japan guitar. I got this guitar in, I think it was like the beginning of '92,
Awesome.
somewhere around there. It's a 1989 guitar, and it's a really kind of interesting story because although I was playing guitar a little bit still, I was still relatively, you know, I was a novice
Right.
at best.
Right.
And this guitar probably got me to play more
Yeah.
when I got it. I had a friend in college, and he was on his way up from Long Island, and he stopped at this like pawn store / music store, and he saw these speakers that he wanted for a stereo system. You
Yep.
know, these clipped speakers or whatever.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So he ends up showing up, and I'm at the dorm, and he says, "Hey, PJ, can you go down to Green, New York with me? I want to get these speakers." And I'm
Right.
just like, you know, all right. So I jump in the car and
Day
ride down with
adventure,
him.
why
Right.
not, you know?
And I had some money with me and stuff, you know, but I was not really guitar shop, and I wasn't any shop
Right.
really. But anyways, I walk through the door and I sit down on this stool just inside the door, and there's just like stereo equipment everywhere, and there's, you know, anything you can imagine in a pawn shop, in an antique shop, anything like that, just stuff everywhere.
Right.
And this headstock was kind of like sticking out from behind a box, and it had stickers all over it. Couldn't even read the headstock or anything. But I was just like, I'm sitting there and they're wheeling and dealing, and you know, I'm just sitting there like, oh man. So I picked this guitar up and I'm like, wow, you know, this thing feels incredible. And it just had stickers everywhere, the whole thing. I have a lot of funny sticker stories that are on this guitar. But regardless, I interrupted their talk and I said, "Hey, what's the deal with this guitar? Is it for sale?" Yep, it's for sale. What do you got to have for it? And he goes, $200. It's a Fender knockoff, I think.
Right.
And I was just like, okay. So I'm looking at it, and even the back, the neck plate was covered with a sticker.
Right.
Well,
like that's going to be obvious because it's going to look.
So I look on the headstock and I peeled the sticker and I saw the backwards F, and I quickly put the sticker back down, and I was just like, $200? He says, yep. So I went out to the car and I grabbed some money.
Yeah.
And I had to have this guitar, and it's in a lot of ways nothing special. It's seen a lot of changes. It originally had super distortion pickups in it, but they just weren't quite right when I got
Very
it.
hot pickups. I had a set in a BC Rich at one point.
So I changed them out, and I ended up putting like a Bill Lawrence in the front, and I had like just like a PAF clone of some kind in the back. And then it's had a bunch of different configurations over the years, but it's just I don't know, it's just my favorite guitar. It's always been good to me.
Feels like home.
Yeah. And it's just, I think it's an interesting guitar in that, it's not your typical Telecaster. It's a thin line, and it wasn't really supposed to exist from what I was told.
Right.
I watched a video because I'm like, I got to invest. One time I decided, quite a few years ago, to investigate what I had here. And made in Japan guitars, in my humble opinion, when it comes to Fender, are, after CBS bought Fender, I think made in Japan guitars, I don't know if you agree, they're right up there. They're pretty
definitely
good.
right up there. I think almost half my collection is made in Japan stuff because it's just like they're superb instruments.
And this guitar, I just, once I held it, I was like, I got to investigate. I got to know what it is. And come to find out, they made this guitar like with a little bit different pickup configuration. It just had one single coil pickup in it, but it was up front. It wasn't in the back. It was just up front, and it was just like a really odd guitar. So anyways, rumor has it that they made these particular guitars by mistake. They cross-referenced two different guitars.
Which I could understand happening.
Yeah,
different languages, beginning of a factory.
So anyways, they made a very short number of these, and
somebody was like, "Oh, stop."
Yeah, but it's just it just never lets me down. It stays in tune. It's comfortable. It's just I love everything about it.
Some guitars that if a guitar stays in tune like perfectly every time, like that does have a tendency, because I have a couple of them where you're just like, that G string or the D string is always just out a little bit. And I love how reverse headstocks look. I hate how to fucking tuning them. Like, it's just one of those things. I hate just doing this. So it's like, as much as I love it, it would not be like if I had a signature guitar or if I build another one. Just for that factor alone, I probably would flip it to the normal side.
Plus, this guitar was really good
very
without
vibrant.
Plugged in.
Right.
It had really good resonance and stuff.
Good couch guitar then, because acoustics are too loud to play on a couch, because then it's like, can't hear the TV anymore. Usually, and classicals are a complete different experience to hang out on a couch with. So
so I've had this guitar since about '92, and I don't really think of all my guitars as like, they're more like tools, I guess. There's a couple I really adore. Like I have a PRS McCarty that I love a lot, and this one. Those two guitars, I don't think I would want to just part with readily. But the rest of them, I don't really hold. They don't.
You're right. I understand. They could come and go. And
this
be like,
one different.
I'd be like, I missed that one tone-wise every once in a while. And if you want to see that PRS, I'm going to do a little self-promotion. Head on over to our interview that we did, was the Tone Zone number 7, I believe, was the Pega one that we did up in Scott Their Keyboard's house. So you can check out the PRS there. So
you kind of talked me into buying that PRS.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, me and Drew were just like, dude, you need that thing, man. But I'm happy you still like it. So
I love it.
It was a good bullying.
It's a great guitar.
Bullying isn't always bad.
Nobody wanted it because it didn't have birds on it.
Right.
And I was just like, and once I played it, I was like, they're crazy. This thing's incredible.
Yeah, no, those, because it's got like the little moons, right?
Yeah,
the circles are like half
moon.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's absolutely beautiful. All right. Current amp. I know in the video you were using the Boss Katana Artist, but underneath it you had the Fender that we didn't really get to see. It's a Tone Master, correct?
No.
No, it is not.
No.
I apologize. It is
No, it's a deluxe reverb reissue.
That's right.
An early one.
And
one of the earlier ones.
if you had to pick an amp, if you were like, oh, if I could get a Victory amp or something like that, I'd sell the Fender towards it, or are you kind of like, yo, this Fender is dope, and I will just mold around this? And
Well,
I'm happy.
I've had the Fender Deluxe Reverb now for, man, quite a long time. I'd say all of 10 years.
That's great.
12 years. And I've had other amps too to accompany it and things to try. And I keep that one.
Mm-hmm.
But I've let other things. I had a Victory. I thought that amp tried to do what my Deluxe Reverb does.
Right.
It's the way it felt. So that went down the road. The reason I chose to get the Katana was...
That's funny you had a Victory. I just literally guessed that amp out of fucking nowhere.
Yeah.
That's so weird.
I had the Duchess.
Oh, awesome. Awesome.
And it was a great little amp, but it just, ultimately it did very much try to resemble maybe the Fender Voxy thing too much, and it just didn't work.
Right.
Eventually, a great sounding amplifier. But I'm currently amp shopping.
Okay.
I got bit by a bug recently, so I may add to my arsenal. But the Boss Katana that we were just talking about, that amp is really quite an amplifier.
Yeah.
For being what it is. I mean, you remember the days when they had Line 6 spiders and stuff like that, and you were just like, it's almost there, but not quite.
Right. And the Boss is pretty much
Boss
there.
is there.
Yeah.
I mean, it just, I think if you throw a sheet over the top of your Boss Katana and you're gigging with it, nobody's going to say your amp sucks.
They do a lot of those blindfold challenges, and a lot of the times, I mean, you really can't hear the difference. Maybe as a player, you might be able to feel the difference, which is debatable, and then you might play better and blah, 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 blah. But for the person in the audience, if they're watching you have fun on stage, they don't give a fuck what you're playing through. They're just like, hey, it sounds good. Or as long as it doesn't sound bad. I have heard a couple live bands where you're just like, I hope it's the sound guy's fault.
Yeah.
You can always blame the sound guy, I guess.
And especially in this day and age, I mean, a lot of people aren't even using amplifiers. They're using plugins, or they're using a pedal board preamp or whatever. And, it's crazy because, it used to be that the combo amp was kind of, oh, you only have a combo amp, you don't have a half stack or something. But I've played the gigs with the bands that have the half stacks with my Deluxe Reverb, and I never have a problem.
Yep. War Park, the band that toured from New York City, Philly that I interviewed, dude had a Blues Junior. And it's like you could tour with the Blues Junior, and they were like a rock band. It wasn't
It's
like
one of
a
the
bluesy
loudest
thing.
little amps
Yep,
ever.
15
man.
watts. 15 watts. You tilt it back, throw it up on a stand, and you are good to go.
Yep.
Somebody else had, and I'd actually never seen one before, and it's a great idea. He used a Kemper, and he had a Friedman 212 cabinet that was a like a hatchback monitor also.
Oh.
And I was like, well, that's really cool because it looks like you have a guitar cabinet then, but you can just tilt it back and it almost acts like a personal monitor.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's a really cool, like, happy medium to look like
that's
the rock
kinda cool.
star. And I was like, it stopped me in my tracks. I was like, oh, big ups on Friedman for that. Digital route. Have you ever been like, I'm selling all my pedals and I'm going to buy a Line 6 Helix or a Digitech GNX4, one of those back in the day, or have you always had individual?
So I did tour for a short time with a TC Electronic Nova system.
Which is one of the higher end
Yeah.
digital route systems, I would say.
And it was,
Didn't really have amp models, right? Or did it have?
well, they weren't really amp models per se. They would give you like, I guess, I don't know how to really put it. It was you could shape your amp tone
Oh, okay, yeah.
more or less, and then you could, like add different speaker emulation configurations.
That's the stuff
and
that I
things
always like. I never seem to do it right, and people are like, "Oh, do this exact thing," and I do it. And I'm
Yeah.
like, "It sounds like shit." What are you talking
Yeah,
about?
I mean, I liked it. It was great on some levels, but there was always, it just seemed like there was this little millisecond of something, and it just didn't have the breath that a regular tube amplifier or a good amplifier had. it lacked something.
Right,
you
and the
know?
Boss seems to actually do that. Like the Boss
Yeah.
is like a lively, solid state amp and everything
Yeah.
like that. So it's almost like a Roland Jazz chorus. It's like if anybody's like, "Oh, I can't play through solid state amps," and it's like you can't play through a jazz chorus, then you can't play guitar because it's one
Yeah.
of the most beautiful sounding
Yeah.
amps
Yep.
of all time.
Yep.
And a little secret out there: if you guys like the tone of the Metal Zone pedal, buy a Boss Metal Zone and throw it in front of a JCM 120, and it's like instant chainsaw tone because it literally just reproduces that Metal Zone just volume. Like that's all it does. It doesn't color it or anything like that. So if you like Carcass or any of those albums, that's a cool little death metal secret for you. So try
Nice.
that out definitely. Is there a guitar? You actually kind of answered this a little bit before we were talking. Is there a guitar, or before we hit record, is there a guitar you're always on the hunt for? You had said another one of these
Yeah,
motherfuckers.
if I could find one more of these, like in good shape, I have found them, but they're, matter of fact, back in the days when we worked at Guitar Center, I'll never forget, a cat comes through the door and he wants to trade in this guitar, and it was the same exact guitar
Right.
as mine, but it had a big hole right here.
Yeah.
And I was just like, man, we can't take that guitar.
Willie Nelson
And
did
I
on
thought,
us, man.
I'm like, do I get that guitar and put like a pick guard over it or something? And I was just
Right.
like, and I just, I'm
Yeah.
not gonna do it.
It's
But,
out there somewhere
yeah,
then. So at least
I've seen them here and there.
Yeah.
You do see them once in a while.
Right.
But, they'd made a burst one as well as this, like a sunburst. But yeah, I'd love to get another one of these. I don't really, I don't know. It's kind of crazy. I guess the older I'm getting, I'm not really lustful for guitars.
Understandable.
I just kind of have found the things that work for me, and I'm just growing old with them, I guess.
Yeah, no, I'm at this point where it's like if I find something that's a crazy good deal and I'm like, I'm stupid not to buy it, then I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'll get that. And if I like it, I'll trade something in towards it after getting it. But the only guitar that I personally have where every time one pops up, I almost get it. Gibson made Les Paul for 2 years. It was a gecko color. It's yellow. It's yellow to green. Most
Oh,
people
wow.
are like, it's fucking hideous. As you can tell, yellow to green is kind of my, because a dime bag was kind of my thing. And I could have bought it at like a GC cost back in the day. And now when I see them go for like $3,000, I'm like, they were $2,000 new. And some of the Gibsons, I'm like, I'm already going to be taking a 50-50 chance with a Gibson, in my opinion, whether or not it's going to be like great shape. Because it's, at this point, they came out in 2006. So we're talking almost 20 years old, a lot of them. So it's like, I don't want to buy something that needs a fret job. Last thing you want to do is put $350, $400 into another guitar and stuff.
It's funny when you hear, I remember when I was younger, hearing older players say, you don't need all that fancy stuff, you just need a good guitar, and just, some of the cheaper ones are better than the more expensive ones. And then you go through the whole vintage guitar world and all these different things.
Yep.
Man, a person could go really poor trying to chase those things. And I think, you're foolish just not to play what feels good to you,
Right.
works for you, and,
Yeah, there's a couple on here where I'm like, I like heavier guitars. I don't like super heavy guitars, but I have a G&L that I love, but it weighs like 6 pounds. And every time I pick it up, I'm just like, it just feels like it's just like, some people would just be like, no, that's awesome. That means it's airy and I could play it for 3 hours and it wouldn't bother me.
That's the other reason I love this guitar. It's just so light.
Right.
It's super
So
light.
you might like the GNL. It just didn't. I don't know why. Maybe because it is a solid body and it's light. I'm like, is this real? Like it's one of those things. But everybody kind of gets their niches after a while, I think, and everything. Is there a guitar you regret selling? Either you had to make rent 1 month and you were just like, this one's on the chopping block because I got 2 and this one's got to go, or you traded in for something and then like 6 months later you
Yeah.
sold the guitar you traded it for and you were like,
Well, it's funny. Back again when we worked at Guitar Center, I got my hands on, they weren't anything super extravagant or anything, but it just happened to be this guitar that fit me, and I loved it. It played well, and I remember the Fender reps used to come in. Remember they used to bring.
It was great when like they used to like put money into the companies like that, and we'd see those dudes like once a month.
Yeah,
it was,
and
like, pretty
you
regular.
get to know them, and they'd be like, "Hey, Kev or PJ, check this out." Well, one particular day, I'll never forget, the guy comes in, and it's when they introduced the Blacktop
Yeah.
series guitars. Remember those? They
Yeah.
had like the witch,
Black and
like
chrome.
actually
Kinda
the
like
knobs.
this.
The knobs looked just like this,
Yeah.
except they were on
Which I think
Strats and Tellys, and there was weird configurations and stuff.
I think they use those knobs on their pedals now, and I think it looks very cool on the Fender pedals.
So, anyways, it was a Blacktop Strat, Sonic Blue, but it was a very light Sonic Blue. It wasn't really in-your-face Sonic Blue. But I remember I played it, and I was just like, I was so scared to put it on the floor.
Right.
I was just like, if we tag this thing and it goes on the floor. So I remember, I think I saw you, or other manager or something. I was just like, hey, I'm buying this guitar. Please, let's get a price tag on it so I can buy it. And we did, and I purchased the guitar. Well, some years after, I had to part with it when I was kind of going through some rough stuff, financially. I was just like, well, I guess a guitar's got to go.
Yep. All been there.
Off it goes, and I took it and sold it to the store. And I remember I got about half a mile down the road, and I go, I am so dumb. I'll never have a Strat that I like as much as that guitar again. I haven't had one that I like as much.
Yep.
Well, I went back, and somebody had already purchased it.
Yeah.
Like immediately somebody bought it. Well, so I thought it was gone. And then some years later, I was talking to a good friend of mine, and he called me, and he's like, PJ, you're never gonna believe this. And I'm like, try. What are you talking about? He says, I found your old Sonic Blue Strat. And I was like, how do you know it's mine?
Right. First question, you're like, I don't believe this guy.
He goes, I know it's yours.
Right.
I know the guy that bought your guitar, and he had it in his closet for like ever since he bought it. He changed the pickups out of it, played it for like a few months, and then closeted it.
Right.
So he goes, and you'll never guess what else. I bought it today, and I want to get it back to you.
Oh,
And I
your
was just
heart's
like,
just like, oh my gosh.
oh my God. So I wasn't sure that he had the actual guitar, but I ended up riding out, and as soon as it got in my hands, I knew it was.
Right.
Soon. And there was also a mark on the back of the guitar that I remembered.
Yep.
And first thing I did is look, yep, it's there. Played it for a second, and I'm like, you will not go anywhere again.
Right.
And it's not really a super expensive guitar. It's a made in Mexico Fender, and I don't have a problem playing made in Mexico guitars. I think, as a matter of fact, we have talked about this many times. I think that Mexicans make fine guitars, and guess what? The wood, the maple, probably comes from the United States, doesn't it?
Right.
So who cares? If you're going to be snobby about guitars, you're foolish, because there's great Chinese guitars, there's great Mexican guitars, and I will proudly play a made in Japan or a made in Mexico Fender any day.
One of the, I hate to say golden eras, but one of those things that I look back on fondly, when I first started working in a guitar store in 2004, 2005 in Guitar Center in Virginia Beach, we would have an island of Mexi Fenders and Strats, or Fender Strats and Tellys. You'd have, say, sage green. You'd have a maple and a rosewood Strat and Telly, so 4 guitars, and we'd have all 8 colors. So you'd literally have an ocean of like 50 to choose from, and they were all $350, I think. And it's like, if you could go back now and buy 50 of those, you'd probably never buy another guitar ever, because those values were so incredible. That and the Gibson Les Pauls that were like those Warren Brown ones that were like $7.99.
Yeah.
Those things were some of the best values ever, but you can't go backwards.
Yeah.
So, do you play, we talk a lot about electric. Do you play acoustic or classical?
I play, as a matter of fact, in Pega, my current band, I do a lot of acoustic stuff.
Awesome.
I do gravitate every once in a while towards acoustic, especially when I'm writing music. Sometimes I just get into a vein where that's what I want to do for a while,
And that's what I had said too when I was like, I watched Tommy Emmanuel, and I'm just like, yo, that Aussie is fucking crazy. I want to get on there and just bang the shit and everything like that too.
I don't know if you agree with this, but like the acoustic guitar is almost a different instrument from the electric because of what you do with it. You
Yeah,
know?
no, I totally
It's more
agree.
percussive on a lot of levels. It's like, I don't know, it's almost like playing another instrument sometimes.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, it totally.
obviously the fundamentals are all the same and stuff like that, but it just sometimes it's nice to just stretch and go that way. You know?
Yep. I'm not much of a capo guy. Like I can't say I'm an adventurous acoustic player. I like, chords and Tool like songs on acoustic. I like droney open notes and everything like that. I
Yeah.
can't say I'm much of a. I got 3 capos and everything like that. It'd be fun to play like that. Just never really worked for me. I really wish I could get into the banging stuff, but I only have 1 acoustic and it's very nice. And the last thing I want to do is damage it. I got a big old thumb. I play bass too, slap that bass. So I don't want to accidentally slap too hard, pull a Willie Nelson, and then all of a sudden my beautiful Breedlove is damaged. Breedlove, you make amazing guitars, by the way.
I agree. It's funny, like to sit around and like, you go to YouTube and you hear 2 guys talk about guitars and gear and stuff for hours, and some people are like, that's the last thing I want to do is sit there and listen to a couple guys talk about like gear and guitars and all this stuff. But the one thing about guitar players is they do like to talk about this
Yes,
kind of
we do,
stuff.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think it's important to do that so that you give that to the next generation or the next person.
It brings a calmness and a peace, and just like it's very weird because working at Guitar Center as a manager, I had to deal with different people, but you dealing with musicians, you deal with people from all walks of life.
Yes.
You could deal with from 1 minute dude in a punk rock band to a preacher in a gospel group to someone coming in there who has no idea about anything and they want to buy a present for somebody to just anything and everything in between. And I think it gives you an appreciation to realize like people are people. And if you kind of approach it that way, then you get a lot farther in life than being like, oh, this guy listens to this kind of music, so I can help him and blah, blah, blah. Because you're like, oh, we're all here to talk about music. We just might go about it in a different way. So,
well,
you can
music
learn a
is the
lot that
first
way.
social media.
Yeah,
I
totally.
can remember sitting around with my neighbors listening to Boston records or Frampton or
Yep.
Kiss or whatever we were listening to, and like it was awesome. Like everybody could have just like get into it.
I talked to some of my old bandmates from high school, and we obviously reminisce about playing together, but we reminisce about those moments of watching a VHS of a Korn concert together, because we would do that 4 times a week, and you're just like, well, that's what we did. That became like our community and everything like that, where it's just more than just like your band. It's just like music is crazy. It brings together just everybody, and it's just we're just 2 random guys here talking nonstop about it and just rambling, and it feels like it's been no time.
I haven't seen
at
him
all.
in a while either, people.
PJ's an awesome person, and
Likewise.
when you talk to great people, you kind of just like talk, and next thing you know, you're like, oh, it's been 2 hours, and no one even notices, and that's when you true friendships and everything, when you don't have to force conversation and
Right.
stuff. And I think that's same thing in music. The last band I dealt with, Apollo Suns, all instrumental. So there's no vocalist. So you have to watch 7 band members visually kind of tell one another, we ready to turn now and everything like that.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's great when you form those friendships or bonds with people where your eyes can tell a whole story and everybody's like, okay, we got this and everything. So play instruments, get in a band. But whether or not you think you're musically acclimated or not, figure out something. Play a kazoo, a harmonica, something like that. I think everybody, get 3 people that play snare drums, like whatever it is. I think doing something musically or art, something creativity wise, I think is very important, because it brings out the best in people, I think.
Well, I think that's why I like being in a band so much. Is it's like, it's the teamwork to make it happen, and it's like, a dependency on the other musicians to make you sound good and for you to make them sound good. And once you get that all worked out and figured out, I mean, that's a pretty special thing.
It's
you know?
magical. It's
Yeah,
magical
it
when you
is.
get past that point of like, oh, we're the first couple jams together might not be like the easiest thing, but when like you kind of stick past it and it becomes that like, oh, we jammed for an hour and a half. There were 4 wrong notes and we didn't even have to think about it. It's just like, oh, look, that's language. That's
Yeah.
the communicate. You know, it's,
Well, I
it's
mean,
amazing.
think about some of the cats that we worked with in the music store.
right.
The talent in some of these kids that we worked with, I would be dumbfounded.
In all honesty, that's part of the reason why I
was
started.
dumbfounded.
It's part of the reason why I started this, and I've told some of the people who I've met after my music life, and I was just like, I know and have been grateful to meet some of the most talented people I have, that I could ever dream of meeting, like Greg LaPointe, Pat
Mark
Benson,
Turley.
Mark Turley, Pat Benson, who's out
Yeah,
there, been
Pat
out there
Benson,
with Nine
great
Inch
cat.
Nails and stuff like that. Todd, who has done 2 WrestleManias now with the drones and everything. Like Charlie Orlando. I mean, dude's been a musical like entity for 30 plus years. Like,
Yeah.
we know some very, very talented people. So I'm
Yep.
happy to kind of be the person facilitating, letting the world know like Central New York has lots and lots of talent that has come from around here, and I just want to showcase it. So I'm happy. I'm giving an opportunity, and I guess I kind of made it myself and gave myself an opportunity to do it. But
Doing a fine job,
I
too, brother.
appreciate that. And like I had said, there's this just happens to be filmed on a night to where there's going to be a couple more things kind of being announced. This is the end of September, 2024, and I think by November there's going to be some very cool stuff happening on this channel. So make sure you check it out. Keep checking us out. Keep checking out Funkin' Waffles, and there's going to be some mighty fun stuff happening that I hope to get to share with you guys. A couple more questions, and then we got a fun second part to this, and then I'm going to let my friend PJ enjoy the rest of his night because he's been so kind to give us his time already. Is there a live guitar tone that you went to a show and you were just like, oh, this is going to be a good show, and the band came on and you were just like, holy crap, just had your socks blown away?
Yeah. So I got for a gift from my wonderful wife a box set of David Gilmour's Rattle That Lock. And I was excited because I was like, oh man, I really want this album, and she got me the box set. So I was like, just wow, what a great gift. I can't wait to listen to this. And it was in a little box, and I looked down and there was an envelope in there. So I pulled the envelope
Envelope's
out,
always the best. The best gifts come in
Yeah.
envelopes, in all honesty,
and my jaw hit the ground. It was 2 tickets to Radio City Music Hall for David Gilmour.
Oh, so like one of the venues,
Yeah.
like everybody's got a list of venues, and it's like, that's on everybody's.
And I already knew that I was going to hear good stuff, but when you actually, to put it mildly, as soon as he started playing, it was just like, oh my God, I just can't even believe this tone that I'm hearing.
Right.
I mean, there's been other players too, like Warren Haynes has blown my mind several times, Jimmy Herring, Peter Frampton, lots of players.
Right.
But David Gilmour, there is just something about his tone, and that tone, Kevin, I'm telling you, it was just like otherworldly.
Yeah.
It was nasty when he wanted it to be. It was, ethereal when he wanted it to be, and it was beautiful when he wanted it to be, but it was him.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You could hear him in
Yeah.
everything that he did, and his tone was just, oh my God.
And it's crazy because I've listened to, you go through eras where you're just starting to listen to Floyd, and it's like, you get into Dark Side of the Moon and The Wall, and then you learn, Sauce Full of Secrets and stuff like that. And I have recently gotten more into the 80s stuff and Learning to Fly. God damn, dude. Like, the solo comes in and you're just like, you feel soaring. Like, it's just like that dude, like, I have a book. I was going to pull it out. I actually have a whole, I'm sure a lot of you have read The Guitar Enthusiastic. I mean, when you have a book dedicated to just one guitar and it's this big, very clearly, like, you have made it in guitar land. And yeah, David Gilmour, Wish You Were Here is one of my personal favorite songs of all time.
I love the whole entire, and it's apparently from what I've heard, it's not his favorite album, but the Animals album just had some incredible, wicked guitar stuff on it.
Yeah.
It gets kind of maybe swept under the rug a little bit
Right.
when you think about that next to Dark Side of the Moon or The Wall or whatever. But I mean, if you think about all his work across the board, and especially his solo stuff, I don't know the attention to detail that he probably put into his solo stuff
Right.
versus Pink Floyd. But I mean, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Still floors me.
There's a great live version of that whole album done by Les Claypool and the Flying Frog Brigade. That they do Animals in its entirety. And when I first was like, oh, Les Claypool can't sing, dude, Les Claypool fucking nails it. Like
Yeah.
it's such an ambition, and it's just like that dude is. I can't believe how talented that I grew up a huge Primus dude, and now to see like all the kind of prog stuff he's done and all this, like that dude is just crazy talented. There was something else I was gonna say about Pink Floyd. Oh, the first time, a little fun story. The Wall. If you guys have never seen The Wall, crazy weird movie. Definitely watch it. First time I saw it was watching playing Scrabble with my mom and my brother. And so not really like the the not what you would think while watching it. And I remember it gets to the point where he shaves, and I was just like, "The hell is going on?" Like just a crazy adaptation and everything. But I would have loved to seen that shit live, like to see The Wall because they actually built the wall and it all broke down and everything like that. That would have been awesome to see.
When you're growing up as a kid too, and you have your guitar heroes or your your favorite bands and stuff, I can remember thinking, I wonder what those guys are like.
Right.
And then as you get older and you start to hear and you read interviews or see,
Hate each other
Yeah,
every second
but
of the day.
I don't think
unfortunately.
I bet you they don't really hate each other. It's they grew apart a little bit just as
Right.
people, but they had different missions.
Right.
And I had somebody recently say to me, David Gilmour or Roger Waters, and I was like, don't do that to me.
Right.
Don't do that to me. I'm not going to pick somebody, and they were both members of Pink Floyd. They both made the band great. They're both incredible musicians, but they're both good human beings deep inside. I mean, David Gilmour's done all kinds of things for human causes and environmental causes.
Right.
Roger Waters is a huge human rights advocate.
I was gonna say right. That's what it
you know,
seems like.
There's so many things to think about in the big picture. Why am I going to pick one?
Right. It's like
know?
if you're gonna say Dio or Ozzy,
Yeah,
they
I
fucking
mean-
both rock. Who
Yeah,
the fuck
I'm not
cares?
doing that either.
Yeah,
I'm not,
exactly.
are there musicians out there that you go, man, that musician was just an asshole?
Right.
Well, probably, but at the same time, don't do that to my heroes.
Yeah. Why
like you said,
choose?
I'm not gonna discount Ronnie James Dio doing Black Sabbath material.
Right.
It was incredible.
I wish he would have tried to do, because I know he just refused to do all the Ozzy stuff, and it's like, I wish he would have been like, well, here's my interpretation of Iron Man, or something. Because could you imagine Dio doing Sweet Leaf? Because he didn't do any of the Sabbath stuff. He was just like, no, this is a new thing, and it's just like, I wish he would have just put his own spin on it so we could have heard it. But another sidestep. As a guitar player, I know I'm supposed to say Van Halen is only Van Halen with David Lee Roth. In all honesty, I like the Sammy Hagar stuff better because I think they're better songs. I think if you put, everybody's got their own opinion, and maybe because of my age, and I didn't grow up with being the tapping thing wasn't where I was like, oh my god. Jump was more when I first heard them. So when became the Sammy Hagar stuff, I was like, well, these fucking songs are amazing. I don't care that he's playing keyboard. So
Yeah, I mean, it's just two different entities for me, I think, I don't know. I can't.
why pick? Enjoy both. Why pick?
Yeah.
All right. Is there a guitar player? This is kind of one of those age-old questions. Is there a guitar player, live or deceased, that if you could jam with, you'd be like, I'll sit down with that guy and have a cup of coffee and jam with him or her?
Yeah, there's two, I think, for me. If I could, there used to be a street musician downtown in Syracuse, and you know, I would very often, if I was playing a show, you know, downtown, he would come out and he would be playing, and he was just such a down to earth,
Be outside the landmark, you know.
Yeah,
I totally know. I totally know. I wish I could say I had an experience of like jamming with him, and it was always more or less just like me walking by. Unfortunately,
But I always thought, man, it'd be so cool to just sit down with him. He ended up passing away quite some time ago, but and his name is escaping me for some reason. But I met him only like a few times, but he was such a genuine good person. I was like, man, I'd love to sit down and jam with that guy, you know. But if it was a guitar player that I could actually like from the past sit down with, I would love to sit down with Duane Allman. Yeah. Duane Allman, man. The Allman Brothers Band are also two of my favorite players, you know, and at the players that came later that joined the band, you know,
Right.
Jack Pearson, Jimmy Herring played with him a little bit.
Derek Trucks.
Warren Haynes, Derek Trucks. You know, Jack Pearson is like, if you don't know Jack Pearson, people, you need to check him out.
I'll
Jack
have to go
Pearson is
check him out.
incredible. But the players that played with them, the Tollers,
okay.
you know, that played with the Allman Brothers, all these cats were just all killer musicians, but, you know, they all tried to, you know,
Honor Dwayne.
yeah, in some way, shape, or form, which, you know, and Dickie Betts was his own voice in the guitar and had a different style that worked well with him. And he's one of my heroes too, Dickie Betts. But Duane Allman, if I could sit down and play with him for like 5 minutes, I would be.
Another one of those cats where you just kind of look like, where you look at him and you're like, it's a cool looking guy, you know, kind of had the Gilmore hair and everything, you know, at least in my opinion.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, you know, that's what it's about really at the end of the day is, you know, I think that's what the whole thing we're talking about is how you can relate to others with this stuff, you know,
Yeah.
like that's what makes it important. If somebody is paying attention to what we're talking about right now, it's probably because they have a love for the same things we do. or
Right.
The guitar and, you know, all these things we're talking about. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, good. It's so funny how just like 6 strings, 12 notes, and it can mean so much more than just, you know. That's why I like taking the pictures of guitars out in nature, because it's like, all it is a tree. You know, like it's funny to think how it all starts from like a tree and somebody chopped it down and threw some stuff on it. And
Yeah.
here we are talking for an hour and a half about how we are obsessed with it for 25 years. Like it's insane. 2 more questions. 2 more. If you could make a signature guitar, what would it be, PJ?
Well, actually, I'm actually getting a signature guitar made for me right now.
Look at that
Yeah,
answer.
you know, I'm not a hot shot guitar player, but everybody knows that. But at the same time, like I've had this idea for a guitar for quite some time, and I always liked radical guitars a little bit when I was
Talked
younger.
about the Explorers and everything
Explorers
like
and
that.
Firebirds. I always
Yeah.
loved Firebirds.
Yeah.
So I'm getting a play off of a Firebird
Cool.
that, you know, is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be kind of geared towards the Firebird 1, just one pickup,
Okay.
just a monster all-night player kind of guitar. But what's going to make it very interesting is the scale length will be not typical to this guitar. It won't be, and I'll give you some details later on.
Yeah, I
Maybe
was gonna
talk about
say-
it when I get it or something.
Yeah. No, that's
So,
very exciting.
Yeah, I'm
Can
excited
we
to
say
get it.
who's making it?
Yeah.
Or is that?
So a good friend of mine, a guy by the name of Tom Rada, he's
Okay.
built some guitars for me in the past, and he's a pretty cool builder. He builds, you know, your S-style guitars if you want them. He builds like, he's built a couple of thin lines, and he just does it because he wants to. He's not trying to get recognized,
Okay,
but he builds
cool.
a nice guitar.
Right.
And so a while ago we were talking, and he goes, I want to build you a PJ guitar. What you want? So he goes, we'll call it your signature guitar.
That's
I was like,
awesome.
what?
Yeah, so make
So,
sure you check out PJ and Pega and everything, so that way you can see that guitar. I can't wait to see it myself.
And it's going to be a color that you adore.
I'm gonna get. I have a color I can guess. Then would be
Yeah,
green.
it's
but,
gonna be green, man.
Yeah. And last but not least, like I was saying, we've been talking about how we both been addicted to this instrument for 20, 25 plus years. Why still? Why is the guitar still in your life? I'm sure many things have kind of come and gone, and interests have come and gone.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
you've said, like you kind of told a life story, and it's funny how that was kind of the point of my doing this, has kind of been like, oh, we've learned a lot about this, and it's like the one consistent seems to be a guitar through all this. So
Yeah.
what do you think it is?
So, I think the simple answer to that is that it's something that I can still do. And, like everybody has these roller coaster moments in their lives and things that they're not ready for. Like I had a cancer diagnosis a while ago, and, going through chemo and stuff, the one thing that I could do while I was going through chemo was
Right.
play my guitar.
Oh, that's crazy.
Like I could still want to pick up my guitar. And
Right.
I still long to sit with my guitar, I think through all the ups and downs in my life, the guitar has always been there. And it's something, whether or not I'm a voice of my own or anything like that with the guitar, it's something that I feel like I can do that isn't going to have a bad outcome,
Right.
no matter what.
Right.
Unless I play a shitty note. Who cares?
Right, right.
That's music,
Just bend it a little bit, right? Or
that's
it's jazz. It's
yeah,
jazz.
yeah. But you know what? Music's not meant to be perfect. It's meant to be felt, and it's meant to be enjoyed, regardless. And your imperfections as a musician, when you play guitar or a bass or whatever you're doing, they're what gives you character. They make you, that makes you the player you are. So, I just think that I can't imagine not having a guitar.
Yeah, neither can I.
When my hands are full of arthritis and I can't play, I'm still going to stare at this guitar every day.
Yeah.
And before I die, hopefully I pass it on to a young person that'll appreciate it as much as I do.
Right.
Because I thought about being buried with this guitar. 'Cause
Right.
I love it so much, but can't do that. It needs to be played as long as it can, So I'll get it a fret job and pass it on.
There you go. And I would just like to say, I believe that guitar brings people together. Music brings people together in a way that really nothing else can. Politics brings people together, not in a very positive
Right.
way.
Mm-hmm.
Movies bring people together, but for a short time. It's an hour and a half. We're sitting somewhere. Food brings us together for a meal, but there's really nothing quite like being in a band with people. I can't think of anything. A relationship is different. It's a very different thing. A romantic relationship isn't like being in a band. I can't think of anything that's the same, that develops. Like I was saying with Apollo Sons, they're communicating with their eyes. They're past the point of like needing
And their
to
ears,
say.
probably.
Yes, they're past the point of needing to be like, it's time for the bridge now. They're telepathically communicating with one another through music. It's an amazing thing, and you create bonds with people that I think goes lifelong. Just like how this I think is a clear example of, and everything like that. So. PJ, thank you very much for taking time out of your day to just come over and shoot the shit with a friend.
Man.
But thank you for helping me on part of my vision for what I'm trying to do with this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you know it, brother.
And
Love you much.
Yeah, I love you too, PJ. And there is a second part to this. I've been holding a guitar the whole time, and part of this, we're gonna relax for a little bit, do some editing. We're gonna follow back around here. But part of the idea of this is where they talk about how every guitar player kind of has their own sound and it's in their hands. So I figure, since I get to play kind of through the same amp all the time, and a lot of my reviews are through the same stuff, you guys kind of know what I sound like. So my grandiose idea is to have my friends, when they're over here for the interview, is to rock out through one of my guitars. So that way I'm going to have an amazing catalog of my friends playing through what I play through. So we get to see, is it really in the player? Is the amp really the thing that makes everybody sound the same? That kind of thing. It's one of those ideas I've been kind of kicking around in the back of my head forever, and I think it'll be really fun. And yeah, so it also gives you guys a reason to check back all these interviews because you guys get to
So
see
I
if
get
it
to
does
I get
sound
to
different.
play through the Mean Machine.
That's
huh?
right. This amp over here is a Mesa Boogie I've had for about 20 years. So it's one of those amps where it's like I played through it for so long. It's like that's the only when I hear guitar, it's like that's the sound that I hear in my head. So
Nice.
and the guitar that I chose for PJ, this is a Kiesel. It was made in memory of my mom who passed away. So it kind of represents family to me, and I think
wow.
as PJ as a part of my family because family's bigger than blood, and I really love this dude and appreciate this dude, and so this was the one I chose for him.
Wow.
So we're gonna relax for a few, and then we're gonna come back. We're gonna watch PJ play through my rig for a little bit. Maybe he could do a song playthrough of half a Pega song, and we'll get some sick tones for him, and we'll take it out with that. Thank you guys, Aces Axes, for sticking around and getting to learn a little bit more about PJ, learn a little bit more about me, and
Probably you.
yes. I hope, like I said, I hope everybody was just holding a guitar this whole time, having a cup of coffee or a beer, because that's literally what, a guitar player would be doing.
It's like coffee talk.
Yeah, I like that. Yes, I know Ola England does the coffee with Ola, so we could do energy drinks with Frank Dog. See you guys in a minute. Thank you guys for listening. Peace out.
A little bit more metal than
A little more.
yeah. Just
You want a little more rock?
no. I just kind of just like something kind of a little less edgy. Let's take this off for a second.
Yep.
I got an idea. So
Yep.
take your gain off. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, yep. The reverb on the actual key is non-functioning currently.
That's compression. Let's see something here real quick. Let's see what this.
It's got like a shimmer feature. And that's Quinta, right? Or is that's one of your tracks?
Yeah, that's a piece off of a song called Absent.
Okay, awesome. I know. I was like, oh, it's the one for the video, and I knew it was one of them that I knew, but
That's a pretty interesting pedal.
yeah, it's really nice because it's got a normal spring, but I usually, that little shimmer at the end's kind of like a nice little feature. Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, it's cool.
Awesome.
Well,
Oh, thank you very much for finalizing that, dude. The interview went fantastic.
yeah.
Do you mind if